Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, however you're watching, whether you're watching the live, the podcast on YouTube, listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. We're so glad that you're here. Today's episode, we're continuing our 10-week series on video tutorials. And the reason we're doing that is because there's a lot of reasons to make video tutorials. It's such an important piece of many businesses, organizations. There's opportunities to grow yourself and your skills. So even if you're not a tutorial maker, you probably have knowledge to share inside your organization, in your job, or even outside of that, frankly. So today's guest we're going to be talking with is someone who has made a lot of videos and has learned a lot about making videos for other people. So we talked to a lot of people who are focused on internal video making. You know, they're working inside of their organization. We're going to get a whole nother perspective today. So before we do that, though, just a quick, hey, if you've got a second and you're learning something from today's show, go ahead and post on social media, share it with somebody, whether it's live or you're watching afterwards, and go ahead and tag us, Matt Pierce. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, tag TechSmith if that's easier. We'd love to see what you're learning from watching the show. Now, let's introduce today's guests. Jayne Davids has been involved in learning and development for over 20 years, designing and delivering systems training, combining her love for teaching and enjoyment of making videos through her company, Raiveon. She provides Camtasia training and video production services with her husband, Kevin. Now, Jayne is a fantastic advocate of Camtasia, which of course at TechSmith we love. But more than that, she's someone who's really involved in the community and is always trying to share not only what she's learned, what she's learning, but helping others to do the same. You know, in some ways over the last few years, I've gotten to know Jayne a little bit and watched her grow in her skills and confidence. And as she's going out now, she's doing a lot more presentations, which I think is fantastic because she's got so many good things to say. And, it's just a delight to be able to have her with us today. And with that, I'd like to welcome Jayne Davids to the Visual Lounge. Hi, Jayne.
Hi, Matt. Nice to see you. Wow, that was a massive, brilliant introduction. Thank you so much. I'm very flattered.
You deserve every word and more. So we're so glad that you're here today. So Jayne, one of the things we normally ask people, like, hey, we missed something. Let's see here with that. We're going to skip that today, and here's why. Because we want to get into the content. I'll give you a chance. You can talk all about yourself, but let's do this. Let's start with a new question. 30 seconds, roughly, give or take. Give us a pitch around why video creation is so important to you.
Wow, I think everyone should be making videos. And if you're not, just press that red button and get started. I think it's great for your branding, getting your message out there, connecting people. Brilliant opportunity for sharing information and helping people.
Love it. I love that. And so I think that's a good foundation. So you've been making videos and working with training for a long time. Do you remember the first video that you ever created?
It was awful.
As they all are, right? Tell us a little bit about what was that kind of genesis from that first video to where you are now?
Oh gosh, I think the first thing I really didn't like was listening to my voice. So I had to put myself on, I was doing voice narration as well as screen recording. And that's probably my memory of having to listen to my own voice and edit. And I think now when I look back, it wasn't too bad, but my voice is the main thing. I was very high pitched, very fast. So that's what makes me cringe. But I still had lots of planning. I still went through the process, of understanding or sort of recognizing what's really important. What can I include in this video that will help the person to be able to do what they need to be able to do?
Yeah. It's funny. You said fast, and what my mind went to is like, oh gosh, Matt, slow it down. I'm just like lightning speed lately on talking. So I appreciate that's good feedback. I know wasn't the intention, but it's a good reminder.
Okay.
So Jayne, let's talk high level here for a couple minutes about videos and tutorials. And like I mentioned in your intro, you're creating a lot of videos for other people. You're not necessarily do them for your own company. But kind of high level, what makes a great tutorial video in your mind? Are there certain elements? Are there pieces? Are there things that it needs to be able to do to qualify to be a good tutorial?
Oh, there's a few. Where do I start, Matt?
Pick one and just
If I was to pick one, get to the point and keep on point. So if you've introduced the video that it's going to show you something, or you'll get something from that video, make sure that you get to that point and cover all the necessary points as quickly as you can.
Yeah, I love that. We want to get to the point. We don't want to meander. We don't want to, like I do typically when I do an interview or whatever. So Jayne, tell us a little bit about the process. So with Raiveon and the work that you're doing, companies or organizations hire you to create videos. That's a very different process than we've talked about throughout kind of this 10-week series. And I'm curious, I'm not so much how do they find you kind of thing, but although anyone can find you, we've got links we'll put into the chat, so we won't worry about that. But like, so someone comes to you, if I were to come to you and say, Jayne, I need some videos made, and I'm sure it is every organization you work with has a different process and they're at different points, but typically, like, what does that look like? Are they coming to you and saying like, we've done all the work, now just edit it together? Or are they saying like, we've done none of the work, can you get us going? So could you guide us through that process a little bit?
It varies, and you probably don't like that answer, Matt, but
no, it's great.
It depends, because I'm brought in at different stages. So it could be right at the beginning where they know that they've got maybe a new software implementation, and they realize that they need some training material. And so I might be brought in right at the very early stage of going through the task analysis, what's really important, what would make a great video, and what would be better as a job aid, maybe a written document. And then sometimes I'm invited to work with them because they've got so much content, they've done so much recording, but they've got a bottleneck and they're just not getting the content out quickly enough. And I think that's another key point, isn't it? I think having all that content, you don't want to be sitting on it. You could be helping somebody. So you need to try and get it out as quickly as possible. So one of my recent projects was coming in at that stage. So to help with the editing process, but sometimes it's more of the process. So involved with writing the storyboards, writing the script, creating the voiceover. So it can vary, but I love all aspects.
Yeah, I would imagine, because it feels like that would be hard at any point to come in, because you probably aren't familiar with their processes. You're probably not familiar with all the things, and especially maybe it's easier if you're at the beginning, like, hey, we just need to make some videos, and you get to do the analysis. But I imagine if you're brought in and they say like, like, we've done that, we've written scripts, but that's got to be hard. So what are some suggestions you give? So if someone's in that situation, how do you manage those types of video projects versus like when you do get to see start to finish?
That's really hard because it depends on how far they are down the line of creating. I've had one or two where the screen recording's really quite blurry and they've asked me to edit. So I'll make the judgment of whether I think I have a duty to be able to say, I'm happy to do this for you, but is there an opportunity to maybe recreate, or how, do you have the time and the budget to be able to recreate the screen recording, for example, because it would be more effective. It depends, I think, how far along they line and my relationship with the client, I guess. But I think I have to be honest and be truthful, that if I feel that really, it's not going to meet the objective that they set out to be, then I think I've got a duty to be honest with them.
Yeah. Makes sense. And always, honesty shouldn't be hard, but obviously you don't want to hurt their feelings. Like, oh, your screen recording just does not look good enough, right? Like, no one wants to have to tell anybody that. But so I imagine that's one that's probably it feels like in your video creation process, which I want to talk about here kind of generally in a second, you're adding in these other kind of challenges of creating video when you're working for other people that you're not the organization, right? You're there. You're the hired gun, if I can use that expression, to come in, do this particular set of work, but you then have to manage all these other kind of processes, barriers, and things that that you might someone internally may or may not be dealing with. So I think that it just feels like it's really interesting to talk with you, Jayne, just because I think it's an added layer of complexity that like, when I make a video for TechSmith, I obviously have checks and balances. I have to write, like I do these things, but it's a little different than if I'm being outside of the system being brought in. So super fascinating. So let's talk a little bit more about your process. So let's not worry about all the extra layer of complexity. I think we just need to acknowledge that it's there. You're given a project, like where do you start and how do you move from we need a video to kind of end product? And I'm sure there's probably some basic steps we talk a lot about, but I'm curious what processes you go through or path you take.
Yeah, I think one, I'd probably start trying to get familiar with the client, understand their sort of their tone of voice and how they approach things. I'll review some of their videos that they've already made just to get a feel, because it could be that I'm asked to make videos exactly to what they've done before, so they're consistent. I'd have a look at their brand guidelines, so I'd always find out what are their restrictions, what are their guides, their color palette, for example, do's and don'ts. I've had different clients that prefer to have a more formal conversation in their script writing. So there's quite a lot of research that I do before even jumping into let's make a video. So I try to get, more familiar with the client and their requirements first.
Can I ask you a question about that, Jayne? Because that's really interesting, right? Because I think again, I'm just gonna do. Sorry if it's all these contrasts, like what we've been hearing versus this, because I think a lot of L&D learning development departments have, marketing departments that say, here's the style guide, here's the colors, here's the brand. Are you particularly asking for those things, or are you, I'm assuming you're going out and just kind of looking as well in addition to, and then from a matching style perspective, I'm asking a lot of questions. I know I should focus on one, but so how do you find that stuff? How are you getting that? And then two, from a kind of that style, because I think it's really hard to make a video like someone else, because just stylistically, if you don't know what they did or how they did it, or if they did something crazy, I'm curious about that process. So we'll take the first question here of like, how do you make sure you're matching kind of branding, style guide, and then what's it like to match someone else's video work?
So the first question, to answer that, I usually ask for brand guidelines. I think it's really important because if I'm also sort of doing the intro maybe and the title slide, then I think it's good to know. So it's a question that I have up front with my clients. What was the second question?
That's all right. I threw a lot at you. Second question is about matching other people's videos, because you mentioned that, and the thought in my mind is like, I know from like working on a team, over time we would develop like patterns, right? Like, oh, we know that this is what we're gonna do, our intros look like. But when you're coming in as the outside person and they just say, hey, could you match this video? I've got to imagine that that's a real challenge to figure out how, like, what are the key criteria? Are there tips that you have to help to do that, or things that you've learned along the way that would make that easier?
I can't say there is any tips, unfortunately. I guess just watching their videos, talking to their content creators, understanding the style guide as well as the brand guidelines. I'd be asking or looking at their videos, are they changing the cursor? When are they producing text callouts, for example? So I think it's just a matter of looking to see what exists already. Matching the tone of the language, I think that's not too bad, but I certainly have to do some research in listening and watching their videos, but spend some time if there's someone that's already been creating, spend some time with them. But there's no hard and fast. I think each client is different, which I find really exciting. It's challenging. It is hard because each client has different processes, different systems. And of course, if I'm making a video of a new system they're implementing, I'm also learning that as well.
Yeah.
So that is massive learning curve.
Oh gosh, I can only imagine. And then you're doing that for however long, and then you're going to the next one and the next one, which is exciting, right? New things, new opportunities, but definitely I can see all the challenges that get wrapped up in that. But yeah, I'm impressed that you're able to do that consistently with each client is match their style, because I have habits. Like I have things that I do in Camtasia that are a certain way, and for good or for bad, I think it's pretty impressive that you're able to do that. Well, let's talk about the editing process, because so you're probably cranking through a number of videos. Like there's it might vary based probably on the client, but I'm curious. You get through all your upfront work, your matching, your analysis of what the problems are. You've maybe even got your script ready, and when you go to build, are there kind of preferred steps along the way, or what does your actual editing process look like? Once we'll say you're even done recording, are there things that you do in a certain order that you prefer to do that you feel like are necessary to do?
Yes, there probably is. If it's going to be a number of videos, I would have created a template. I would have added the customer theme. So for those, I use Camtasia, obviously. So I would make sure that I do some setup of the system first. I think for me, I generally do the audio separately. I feel that I can concentrate a lot better if I'm just looking at doing the audio. Right, that very first one that I was talking about, the very first video, I did everything at the same time. And boy, that was quite hard, concentrating on articulating properly and smiling and recording where the cursor was supposed to be going. I found that quite a challenge. I do make some of those videos now, but they don't need to be as polished as probably the ones that I'm doing for clients. So I do record the audio separately. I record the screen separately. I would cut out all the bits where I've made mistakes, and then I synchronize those. So I would match the audio to the screen recording. And then from my storyboard, I've probably identified where effects would be useful. I don't generally overuse effects. I'm very cautious about all the bells and whistles that Camtasia has, which is fabulous, but the types of videos that I'm creating, generally less is more. So I might use, if I've really got to sort of maybe explain something, or the why would they be clicking on that button, I would then add those text call outs. And then what else do I do? Right at the end, I add captions, which I think is really important for accessibility. So yeah, that's probably my process.
Well, I love what you said, that less is more. I think that's just a great mantra for most video that I see a lot of beginners make that mistake, right? Because the bells and whistles, like you said, they're very cool, and it's fun to do. And sometimes it's like that, like, oh, that's really the fun part because I get to do these cool things. But at the end of the day, too many really can break a project. So Jayne, I know, like I mentioned at the beginning that I've seen this growth, and I'm guessing that you've been doing video editing for quite a while. But let's talk about how you've gone and gotten better, because I think it's an important conversation to have. Is we often think that people are just born video editors, like, oh, they're so good, but no one's born a video editor, right? At least not that I know of. So talk us through, like, what are the things that you've done to like very specifically proactively get better with your video editing?
Learning by doing, improving by doing. And, you know, I make videos, I watch videos, but until I actually put that into practice, I need to experiment. I need to be doing it. And that's what I've consciously been trying to do. So whilst I teach people how to do it, I think where I've learned more is actually making those videos myself. And then I'll cover things that work or maybe different workarounds, and then I can share that. But the TechSmith certification is brilliant. If you've not done that, then I would encourage anyone trying to learn how to do that to check that out. So I have gone through that process, even though I know Camtasia. I love learning from other people. I just really like learning. And I think, as you know, you can probably tell, 20 years in learning and development, I think there's something that makes, I just like learning and sharing. So watching other people's videos and that certification, we had a conversation years ago, didn't we, Matt, about that? And
Yeah.
it's brilliant.
Well, we appreciate the shout out. If anyone hasn't had a chance to take Camtasia certification, it is really good. I know I got to work on the first couple of versions. I learned things from it. I you know, as we go through that process, and I think that's the thing, right? Like, I love what you're saying is you got to practice. Practice is key here.
Mm-hmm.
You got to keep. I haven't read a Stephen Covey book in a long time, but the one metaphor that keeps coming back is sharpening the saw, right? You keep doing it. And
Yeah.
there's nothing like, for video editing, there's nothing like doing it. I've watched hundreds of videos, but you got to take whatever you're learning and elsewhere and put them into practice. So I think that's really good. And obviously there's great resources out there. I do want to say, if you're watching along live and you've got a question, put it in the chat. We are monitoring. Jesse's got it. And in fact, we do have a question, Jayne, if we can take a question. This is from Kenny. He's watching on YouTube. It says, so if you're demonstrating a procedure using a screen, you still do a separate video. So the question, you're watching on a screen, you're recording that separately then from your audio?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And again, just reiterate, because you kind of mentioned this, but why are you doing that?
I think it creates a more accurate and polished video. So when I'm recording the screen, I can really concentrate on where the cursor is going to. I move the cursor with purpose. Although the cursor smoothing is absolutely fantastic. So I do use that as well. So it takes out all the wiggles. It depends, Kenny, to be honest, because if I'm doing a very quick follow up, if someone's asked me, oh, Jayne, how did I do this? And rather than writing a long email, I'm trying to get better at this, that my video doesn't need to be as polished. And then I will just jump on and I will talk through as I'm doing the screen. So I think it depends on the situation. But for my more polished videos, I will create them separately because I feel the outcome is better for the viewer.
Yeah, I totally agree with your assessment, Jayne. I think it makes a much more polished video. Although recently we learned from Chandra Owen, who is from the TechSmith customer education team, what their team is doing now is they're doing what they call scratch video. So it's kind of a rougher cut of the video. They're making the video, and then they're actually creating the final, like, polished audio to go with it. So I think that was just an interesting take that I haven't tried it yet. So I think there's lots of ways here, Kenny, that you can do this. But to Jayne, to your point, I think ultimately you record them separately, you're going to get a much higher quality. And there are definitely times that's important and needed, and there's times when it doesn't matter nearly as much. It's more important to get the information out quickly. So
yeah, totally. And I think I picked that point up from you, Matt, actually, because my history and my background is all about, the polished video. But listening to what you share, Matt, and so, I have so many videos that don't get published. And because that's me being a little bit, it's not good enough. But I then feel awful because I've possibly prevented someone learning, and it could have been really helpful to them. So I am trying to get better, Matt, at being, it's good enough, just get it out there and publish it and help somebody.
Well, on the Visual Lounge, we're all about being just good enough. if you've heard me talk, you know it's just good enough that we've been able to keep going. A couple other questions we've got here. David Demian, hey David, good to see you, and thanks for watching. Is asking, do you use a script for audio and video or storyboard? Jayne, I'll throw that to you to answer before I give my thoughts. So, do you use a script for audio and video or a storyboard?
So in my storyboard is my script. So I use a storyboard that has 3 columns. And the first column would be the words that I'm going to be saying. And then in my second column, I have what's going to be appearing on the screen. So because I'm mainly doing screencasts, the screen recording, I'm using Snagit, another product from TechSmith, to just do a screen grab of what I will be seeing. And then in my third column, I've got some hints and tips about where I should be clicking. But I also put some notes in there about if I'm filling in a form, for example, online, what information actually goes in there. But I'll also have some sort of post-editing hints and tips. So this is where I need to zoom in, or this is where I need to spotlight. I don't generally use spotlights too much, but I use a zoom quite a lot to focus in on a certain area of the screen. But my script most of the time is scripted word for word. One of the other reasons I do a storyboard, especially working with clients, is that they have the opportunity then to review that storyboard and review the script. So it gives me an opportunity for them to review that, make any changes. Also, I've had one recently where I wasn't familiar with how to pronounce a certain word in their system. So it gives us an opportunity for them to share that information so I'm saying it correctly. But yeah, so it is scripted, but it's part of my storyboard process.
Yeah, what a great answer, Jayne, because I think you hit all the key points of why the storyboards in that 3-column template is usually, that's what we use at TechSmith, and it's just, it all together makes it easy, but I love the notes that you're putting in there. I love that you're able to you're really creating your video without having to do the work of recording the video yet. And I think that's, especially I imagine working with those external clients, it's, going to be, it's such an important step because you don't want to do all the work recording audio, recording video, and then have them come back and say like, oh gosh, that wasn't quite right. And I always say words wrong. So as much as I try to say them correctly, my tongue and mouth doesn't work. So what a helpful idea. It's usually names I'm struggling with. You all, everyone that listens to the show knows that's a problem. But it actually leads into our next question from Simon B on YouTube's asking, do you use Snagit in conjunction with Camtasia? We just heard that you're using screenshots in your storyboard, but does Snagit get any other use in your video creation process?
Oh, absolutely. If there is a static image that I'm using, absolutely. And I really like the way that you in Snagit, when you share, you can just share it straight into your Camtasia project. So massive time saver.
Yeah, I'm always making little graphics, or I need something that doesn't quite look the same in Camtasia, or just even bringing in a series of screenshots into Camtasia to make kind of a static graphic point rather than having to record something can be super helpful. So Jayne, we're gonna take a quick just 1-minute break here. What we want to do is we're going to introduce a little new segment for you guys today because we love our community. We love the people out there that are doing awesome stuff. We want to highlight some of them. So we're going to do what we're calling TechSmith's High Five because we're going to give this person a high five. So if you see this, we're going to share a link. You can go look at it. But we thought it was just so cool. We wanted to share it out. And today, so our first high five goes to Graphiicious by Christy Cadavan. And Christy, if I said that wrong, again, I already explained I say names wrong all the time. He's got a video. We're going to drop it in the link, put it in the show notes, everything like that. But you guys can go check out his awesome video about creating, Jayne, get this, taking a flat graphic, making it rotate and turn, but making it also look 3D. He teaches you in Camtasia how to add this like light effect even. It is pretty impressive. It's a 35-minute long tutorial. But honestly, by the end of it, I felt like I could probably do that in about 5 minutes. And he's just, because he's teaching you, right? Like he's teaching you how to do it. So by the end of it, I'm like, that was really good. So go check out Graphius' video. Give him a high five on YouTube, and like his stuff. If you see him on Twitter or whatever, you can say. He sometimes attends the show, sometimes not. That's not a criteria. But if you see a video, you see something made with Camtasia, you see somebody making something with Camtasia, Jayne, maybe you'll have a video on here. We'll give you a high five. Let us know if you see something. Tag us. We'd love to give some shout outs, to give some love to our community, because you guys are all fantastic. So thanks for that.
That's brilliant. And can I just ask you, Matt, are you still doing the hashtag made with Camtasia? That was a thing.
Jesse will have to answer that question.
Jesse.
I don't remember if we are. I think we are. We always love to see anybody tagging our stuff if they've used our tools, because good, bad, we want to make sure people are being successful if they're not, and if they are being successful, we want to celebrate that with them. So yeah, you could use that made with Camtasia, or hashtag the Visual Lounge. Usually just at TechSmith, or you can at me personally is pretty good too. So. Well, let's move on, because we got some more questions here, Jayne, I want to ask you. But thanks for the intermission there. One of the things we talked about so everyone knows, full transparency. I usually have a tech test with our guests, make sure things are going to work, get them set up on the system, things like that. We talked a little bit about performance-centered learning, and I'm just going to have you. What is performance-centered learning? And then we've got some questions that we'll dig into here.
Oh gosh, this goes back about 10 years ago, and I had a mentor who was an advocate for performance-centered learning. And I think the main thing that I got from that was we learn by doing, and it was brilliant. And some of the if I relate it to, we're going to make a video, or we're going to make some e-learning, or a software learning package. I think what I would used to be tempted to share everything. So for example, in most software, there's usually quite a few different ways of doing the same thing. So in Camtasia, for example, you've got your keyboard shortcuts, you could click on a button, etc. So for me, the messaging that I sort of got was, think about when you're working out your steps to be able to do that task. Don't concentrate on all the different steps. I always remember the analogy that he shared with me that really resonated with me, which was actually just, if you've got a flight of stairs, how do you get from, if you're explaining to somebody how you move from the top step down to the lower flight of stairs, what are the different ways that you could do that? And so we're talking about, sliding down the banister and doing two steps at a time. And his messaging was all about, yes, those are different ways, but what is the safest and the quickest or the most appropriate way that we want our students, our viewers, to take to be able to do that, complete that task? And that's really stuck with me. So when I'm creating my video tutorials, especially when I'm working with subject matter experts, they'll be, well, you could click here. Oh, and actually you could click here, or you could access it this way. For me personally, I tend to work out the one way, the best way, the quickest way, because the students will find other ways anyway. So that's what I've taken away. But it's all about the learning by doing. So the encouraging, you've watched this video now, really giving them a bit of a call to action. Now go and practice it. So it's making sure that you're actually doing it, learning by doing.
Yeah, I love that, because I'm thinking about Camtasia, even teaching Camtasia, right? Like you can right click, you can go to the menu, you can do a hotkey. There's just off the top of my head, for any one feature, there's probably 3 to 6 ways of really applying that, right? And that's great, because you might find the one path that works, like in your work, maybe you're a hotkey person, or maybe you never touch your keyboard, you want to just stay with the mouse. And it makes sense that you want to give them at least kind of the most, whatever path is going to be like the least resistance for most people, because because I know people that know hotkeys, and if you're really clever, you set up like this is how I control the stream. I've got this little thing, and I've got it set up with hotkeys for Camtasia, right? Like I can do certain like ripple delete. I just have to hit a button. So like, okay, I'm a nerd. I did that right, but most people aren't going to do that. So what is the most common path? So I love that, and I think it was just really important that I wanted to make sure we shared that, Jayne, because as it seems like as you're creating any tutorial video, that should you do 5 different paths, or is it best to focus on one? What do you think? Should we have multiple, or should we just do one and then have another video for another, or should be one, like get the key workflow out of the way? I'm giving you multiple choice here. Key workflow, get it out of the way, and then maybe present another. What's your suggestion?
I think it all depends on the purpose of the video. If it's more like an overview of the software, for example, I think it would sit quite well. But I always think about the person watching, and would it be beneficial for them to know the 5 different ways to do the same thing? Because they've chosen to watch that video because they're under the impression they're going to be shown how to do the thing. So generally, whilst it's tempting to show your knowledge and to show all the different ways, I generally keep the one way. But yeah, I think it'd be interesting to know everyone else. So do tell us in the chat. What do you think, Matt?
Well, I think you're right. I think one way, and then if there are really valid reasons to produce, like to share all those other reasons, make them secondary. Like focus like, hey, this is most people's path. Then at the end, it'd be like, well, there's another, like I'm imagining a video teaching someone how to, I'm trying to even think of an effect, ripple delete. Well, here's how most of you need to do it. But okay, now here's a couple other things, but after the fact, right? So that way, if people want to stop, like I got what I needed, I can go. If I want to get, that kind of that improvement, I could do that. I can see that being in one video, but maybe it's something down below as a note, text, and maybe that doesn't need a video. Well, Jayne, we're going to get to speed round here in just a couple of minutes, but before we do that, and those are our fun, quick questions, I want to ask you, you are obviously someone who has spent a lot of time in Camtasia. You work with a lot of people, talking about Camtasia. We're so grateful for that. I wonder if we can talk about 2 or 3 tips that you are consistently finding yourself giving that help make others better when you teach Camtasia. Like what are the things that you feel like, if you could just help them do those things, that everyone in the world would be a little bit better at Camtasia? Anything you got for us?
A couple that spring to mind, and you've mentioned it actually. Most of the time when I'm training, it's usually beginners that have used it a little bit, but as soon as they don't seem to know about the ripple delete. So the control and the backspace, the magnetic tracks, they're not sure what that is. And the other one is moving items around on the timeline. So use that shift. I always say shift is your friend, because if you highlight that first piece of media, shift, you can drag the whole individual pieces of media on that track, either way, left or right. One of my favorites is if I need to do, I can't remember the name, split ripple move, where you actually click on the gray playhead, and it splits all your tracks, and you can move them to make space. And normally when I show people, it's that sort of, oh my gosh, you can see people's light bulb moment. So it's just, so in my training, it's just those little things that they don't necessarily find in a video tutorial if they're looking to, how do I use Camtasia? I just remember when I learned, so I'm self-taught from about 9 years ago, and it was what would be useful, what used to frustrate me the most back then, and that's what I tend to share those tips.
Yeah, I think if you're new to video editing, all of the things you said, and then kind of the navigating this non-linear timeline, and you got media and moving, like all that stuff can be so frustrating because, it's not just, it's got these nuances that are hard to understand if you're new to it. So I love magnetic tracks, that everything, when you take something out, it just all collapses down. So I don't have to, it just saves me so much time, especially because I feel like I've edited longer videos lately. Like, presentations that are like 45 minutes long that need to be 30 minutes long. And it's like, just boom, 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 just cut. And I don't have to worry about the gaps in the space. So all those are fantastic tips. And if you guys want to learn more, certification, TechSmith certification, if you have maintenance, is available. But also we have free tutorials. And you know what? I'm pretty sure Jayne is on Twitter or on LinkedIn. They can always ask you a question or two. Right, everybody?
Thank you for that, Matt. Yes,
of course. Well, before we go into our speed round here, one thing we mentioned this at the beginning, top of the show. I just want to mention, if you're getting value out of the show, if you like what you're hearing, you learned something today, share what you've learned with us. Go out on Twitter, go on LinkedIn. You can tag Jayne, you can tag me, tag TechSmith. And we want to help amplify that learning. So tell us, what's something you've taken away from watching the Visual Lounge? And you can just tag us, and we'd love to share that out. And you can always find us on, of course, on social media. So if you like the show, go subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on the podcast, wherever you're watching. It helps. That all helps us know that, hey, let's keep going. That's a good thing. So, Jayne, we're finally there. I know the thing you were dreading. It's the speed round. All right. And I know there's a couple other questions that have come in. We'll get to those here after the speed round. But these, Jayne, remember, are meant to be shorter, answered, quick. We're going to roll through them pretty quickly. So first and foremost, tell me, what is the Camtasia monthly meetup?
Every third Wednesday, 6 p.m. British Summer Time. We're a community of video editors, use Camtasia and Snagit, and we just chat. So it's a really lovely, friendly, inclusive meetup. It was started a couple of years ago face-to-face. Matt, I think you came to our first one or second one. But we're online now. But that's great because there's no geography issues. So everyone's welcome.
And they should if they want to find out get all the details of how to connect, they can find you on social media, I'm sure, right? And are Americans welcome? Is it okay if we show up? Is it just UK?
No, not at all. It's totally global, and I probably need to change I've got a LinkedIn Camtasia video editor group, and it does say UK, but that's just really where I'm based, and most of our video editors are based. But all welcome.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. We'll have to talk. Maybe I can get to another one here soon. Obviously, digitally. So next question. Is there a skill or hobby that you picked up during the lockdown and the weirdness of 2020 and 2021?
Lots more walking. But I probably, my son springs to mind actually, because he's taught himself skateboarding. So I'm really impressed and chuffed that he's actually just gone out and picked that up. So
you're not also on the skateboard doing some nollie 360 grind slides?
No,
I know about this much. Me either. I could never do much. So what's one, and we might have talked about this, but for your clients, what's one video skill that you would like your clients to know more of? I know you're trying to get them to give you video work, but if there's something you could get them to know about video, is there something you'd want them to know?
That it's not as difficult as it may seem. So, yeah. Oh, it takes time. Yeah.
It's not as difficult as you have to make it. Like, it's probably easier, and I like that. Yeah. That it takes. Hey guys, it takes time. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't appreciate that sometimes.
Yeah, we get it, right? They want it yesterday. So next question: What's an instructional or informational video you've watched recently that you thought was really well done? Is there something that you've seen that's a good example that we could go check out later?
I'm going to say something on the TechSmith website because your videos are excellent.
That's cheating, but we'll let you
I'm
slide.
sorry. I was
No.
just trying to think what I've been learning recently or what video I would have used. But it's usually, I'm just always in, learning, and I just watch other people's videos, but mainly TechSmith.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that. We appreciate it for sure. Okay, 2 questions left. So where do you turn for inspiration? So you're making lots of videos, doing a lot of client work. Where do you go to be inspired?
Outside, away from my desk, away from my screen, maybe in the garden. Sometimes I hit that brick wall writing a script, thinking of what word is it that I need. So yeah, I think downing tools is really important. Even just go for a walk around the block.
Yeah.
But yeah, and obviously other videos. I'm inspired all the time, and I'm curious what other people are doing, and their approach to things. So yeah, always watching, and always learning.
Fantastic. All right, the last question is one we always ask is, what's one question you'd like to ask me?
Ooh, okay. So if you were not the best learning and video ambassador for TechSmith,
The only.
the only, what would your dream job be?
Gosh, that's a great question. So I am the best because I am the only learning and video ambassador for TechSmith, which it's an elite club. That's such a funny thing to say. Anyway, so what would my dream job be? That's wow. Because in many ways I'm doing that. Like I wake up and I'm like, I can't believe I get to do this. And many days I wake up and say, I can't believe they haven't found out yet that I, like they haven't caught on to me. But I would love, I would love to be like, and I don't have the talent for this. So let's take talent aside. If I could be given that gift, I think I always dreamed about being like a photojournalist that traveled and went and would go to these amazing places and take photos. I do not have the ability with the camera to do that. I find it actually when I've traveled, and I've been very fortunate to travel a little bit, I find it very awkward to be the guy with the camera pulling it out. Mm-hmm. Although except for one time we were working on a video, never got to see the light of day because of some complications with permissions, but I made a video about a particular soccer club and a particular person that played for a soccer club or football club, Jayne, for you, in the UK. And it was so cool to go around. I was outside a particular city in the UK. I'm protecting the people where there's 2 soccer clubs that are very big rivals. So for those in the know. And I got to, I wasn't in the stadium, so I was taking pictures outside of a match. And I mean, it was just so much fun and so cool. So I would love to do something like that, but I am not that person. And so that's okay. But I literally get to have my dream job every day, getting to talk to great people like you, Jayne, and so many of our wonderful customers and helping them be successful. So I don't know.
That's fabulous. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
All right, we've got another question that came in. We've got Michael Carr on YouTube just said, I'm sorry I'm not familiar with your work. Would you please share a tutorial video that you're proud of? Jayne, if you have anything that you want to share, we'll have to put it into the chat or put it in the show notes. But if you could share something with me, we'd love to do that. Or I'm sure you could maybe even go to Raiveon.com. I don't know if you guys have any demos out there.
Yeah, I think what I've been doing recently is hashtag Camtasia tips. So if you do hashtag Camtasia tips, then I've been making some little GIFs, whichever way you want to say it.
I go by GIFs, but we will be okay with whatever.
Yeah, so that's where you'll find some of my very quick, short, to the point, 14 seconds, 20 seconds. So there's no voiceover. But hopefully they're tips that might help you edit videos faster.
All right, Jayne, before we wrap up, if people want to connect with you, we've mentioned Twitter, LinkedIn, obviously your website's up there in the lower third. Any place else they should reach out to connect with you?
No, I think that's yeah. I'm trying to improve my YouTube channel. Yeah, it's work in progress.
You're doing work for everybody else. That's the challenge, right? Like you don't do your own work because you're doing everybody else's, which is fantastic. Yeah. Well, Jayne, thank you so much for all the wisdom you've shared with us today. We're so appreciative of you taking time, and we're grateful for all that you do for the Camtasia community. If anyone's interested, again, there's the Camtasia Meetup. There's a LinkedIn group, which is called the Camtasia Video
Editors, yeah.
Camtasia Video Editors. And don't be scared off by the UK. They'll take you if you're not in the UK. No. All fantastic resources, Jayne. So thank you again for being with us on the Visual Lounge.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
All right, everybody. We're grateful that you all hung in here. If you're still listening and watching to this, thank you so much. Again, don't forget to go like, share, subscribe, do all those things. Again, it helps us. And we would love to hear what you're learning from the Visual Lounge. You got something that you picked up, a tip, something you didn't think about before. It caused you to spiral down the train of thought, and you said, oh my gosh, that helped me to get to this point. We want to know how the Visual Lounge is helping you. And tag us. You can tag me on Matt Pierce. PierceMR on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can tag @TechSmith. That's probably the easiest, and we'll do our best to amplify and share what you guys are learning. So we appreciate you guys, and whatever you're doing, whether you're making video tutorials, you're making marketing tutorials, you're just trying to help someone learn something with the screen recording, doesn't matter. We hope that you'll take a little bit of time every single day to level up. And next week, we've got another great show. We've got, talk about video masters, Jason Vlad and Ryan Aish. And if you don't know their names, you've probably seen their videos from TechSmith. They are some of our instructional designers. They do our webinars. They do so much. You got to meet their counterpart a couple weeks ago with Chandra Owen. And Jason and Ryan. Ryan, he has been with TechSmith a long time. He's like the OG Camtasia video creator. So we'll see you guys next week, and we're grateful to have them there. See you next time. Bye-bye.